Hudson Institute Senior Fellow Michael Doran joins us now live from Washington, D.C. Michael, tell us what we can expect next in the Israel-Iran conflict. Is this the worst of it, or are matters going to escalate further?
Well, first of all, hello. Great to see you and great to be back. I think that we're going to see at least several more days of fighting, maybe even longer. I don't see any quick end to this unless the Iranians capitulate to Donald Trump's demands that they dismantle their nuclear program. The Israelis achieved unbelievable successes in the first couple of days. They decapitated the Iranian military leadership. They shut down, at least temporarily, the Natanz enrichment facility. They suppressed a lot of the Iranian ballistic missile fire that we expected to see. The Israelis were hit by an Iranian counterattack, but it wasn't nearly as bad as some people expected. They have also killed 9 or 10 Iranian nuclear scientists. So I expect that we're going to see this decapitation blow that they struck on the first day. I expect we're going to see a series of more decapitations. It's going to be kind of a continuous decapitation strategy, much like they carried out against Hezbollah.
Michael, I want to ask you where this sort of goes next, because we have seen Israel threaten that if civilian populations were targeted, this would mean that they would go after oil production facilities on the Persian Gulf. And now we've also seen, along with Tel Aviv, central Tel Aviv being hit by some of these missiles, we've also seen Iran take shots at jet fuel refineries, facilities around Haifa. Does Israel now have to go after these oil production facilities, which is where I guess Iran gets so much of its revenue, and does this threaten to then further widen the conflict between these two players in the region?
Well, the Israelis are walking a line on this. The stated goal of the operation is to end Iran's nuclear weapons program and to end the nuclear threat against Israel. But to achieve this, the Israelis are threatening, kind of implicitly, sometimes a little bit explicitly, to decapitate the whole regime. When I said before there was a decapitation strategy, it's been a military decapitation strategy, but they are signaling that they would be willing to go further. And of course, Prime Minister Netanyahu is urging the Iranian people to rise up. Tonight, they struck an oil depot in Tehran. That was a shot across the bow, saying we could go after your oil refineries and take down your entire revenue producing and part of your economy. They don't want to do that because they're afraid. First of all, I think the Americans have probably suggested to them or strongly urged them not to do that. That's been the American position before in the Biden administration. It wouldn't surprise me if it was also the Trump administration's policy. But they also fear that the Iranians will retaliate, not just by taking out energy infrastructure in Israel, but hitting the Saudi and the UAE infrastructure, closing the Straits of Tehran, widening the front in order to pull the Americans in to shut down the war.
Well, what do you think the likelihood is that the U.S. will get involved?
The latest reports out of Israel tonight are that the Americans are talking about possibly getting involved on the side of Israel to actually take out the Fordo site. This is the most deeply dug in, fortified nuclear facility of the Iranians. It's under a mountain, and the Israelis don't have the equipment necessary. That's a B-2 bomber and the massive ordnance penetrator, the big heavy bomb that can penetrate the fortifications. They need the American bomber and the American ordnance in order to do that. At first, the Americans were showing no inclination to get involved at all. But I think the Trump administration has seized the enormous success of the early stages of the war, and there will be voices inside the administration will say that saying, you know, why don't we just help the Israelis finish the job? Finish the job not of destroying the regime, but of destroying the nuclear program. And the argument would be that if we got involved, we could do it much more in a much more speedy fashion and in a much more surgical fashion than the Israelis can do on their own.
But Michael, then doesn't that take away any impetus for Iran not to escalate the conflict by hitting other American bases and so on? I mean, if it's going to become such an existential conflict for them where then they don't have a nuclear program and they're this close to being decapitated, why wouldn't they strategically just try and make this thing as painful as possible, particularly for Israel, which has already been fighting a war in Gaza for some time now and is, you know, I'm sure politically getting rather war weary itself?
Well, they're making it as damaging for Israel as they can, but Israel has stripped them of capabilities, and that's one of the remarkable successes of the war. The decapitation strategy was meant to discombobulate the Iranians right at the very beginning, and that bought the Israelis a window to then degrade their capabilities somewhat. They've also, the Israelis now have pretty much a completely permissive environment, or like nearly permissive environment for their planes in Iran.
Right.
Iran cannot touch them, and Iran is not able, Khamenei is not able to send the numbers of ballistic missiles at Israel that he thought he was going to have. He thought that would be a great deterrence, but the Israelis have managed to suppress a lot of the fire from Iran. That's a remarkable achievement, by the way, because these missiles are on mobile launchers that are very hard to spot. And if the Iranians try to escalate against the Saudis or against the Americans themselves, well, then I think they will just have doomed the regime. So they're in a really tight spot right now, the tightest spot they've been in since the creation of the Islamic Republic.